Okay, so Anis, you were unmuted for a while. Why don't you just continue and say something about the article? What do you think? Anis Shazwin, are you there? I know you're recording, so your name will be the first thing everybody hears when they play back the recording. So they want to hear your voice as well, Anis.
Yes, doctor.
Yeah, I asked you, what do you think about the article in general?
The author is talking about experiences when with their teaching practical.
Yeah,
I think I
yeah, I think, yeah, generally, I think that's what is, written, how he wrote it. Right?
yeah, based on his experiences.
Yeah.
The article
Okay.
is basically talking about his experiences.
Okay. So how do you feel about it in general?
Mm. I think
Hmm?
mm,
How do you feel?
Ikwan, can you help me?
Anybody? It's open to,
Um,
yes, you.
um,
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
as Annie said, this is about a middle school teacher who's teaching English.
Right.
Um, and he is a non-traditional grammar believer.
What do you mean by that? Non-traditional grammar believer.
He thinks that teaching of grammar can be incorporated in other aspect of English, other branches of English. For example, like he was drawn into literature-based teaching.
Okay.
Because he can see that whenever he teach in class, the traditional or formal grammar, like basic, just solely the rules, the students get bored, and he said grammar is considered as the boring part of English. So he believes that grammar can be incorporated into other branches like literature or writing or whatever.
So in other words, he doesn't really believe that we should be teaching grammar per se, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is in regards to the question that I think Izzah, right? No, Izzah asked on Monday, what does explicitly mean? This is what explicitly means. This is traditional grammar. Teaching grammar traditionally is explicit teaching of grammar, right? Okay. Yeah, okay, Ikwan, thank you. Others, how do you feel? Others in this group? Yeah. Izzah, Khalida? Who do you think he's writing for? Who do you think his audience is? Izzah. Sasmita, yes.
Yes, so I think his audience are other educators, like other teachers, because he talks a lot about, there was one part where he talked about how other teachers also view grammar and how some believe that if you give grammar exercises and you do it well, it means that the students understand grammar, but that's not necessarily true. So by giving like these different opinions, he's like telling other educators that there are different views, but that does not necessarily mean that they're right. And he also talks about isolated grammar and how it's not very effective and students find it boring. So it's better for us as educators to first get students interested in the language, like how he used literature to make them more engaged in the lesson. And then you start bringing in grammar, like to support into literature so that they feel more interested.
Yeah, okay. Do you think his arguments are convincing?
I think his arguments are quite convincing because even back in school, like for me as a student, a lot of us didn't pay attention to grammar because it felt very rigid and it was
True. Very strong, very heavy.
Yeah. Okay. But why is it that teachers are still teaching, grammar explicitly? They're teaching grammar. Why do you think that's happening?
maybe because they find it easier to just present the rules rather than finding a more creative way to present it.
Right. Okay. I mean, also here, I don't know who the writer is. Did he mention his name? Or did
No,
he mention the name? No. Okay.
there's no name there.
But there were a few reasons given, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is his or her, opinions regarding why teachers are still teaching grammar traditionally. Yeah, I agree with you actually, that definitely it's much easier to teach grammar explicitly because you treat it as some sort of content and it's something like you can tick off, by saying that, oh, okay, I've taught it, so I'm okay with it. I've taught subject verb agreement, so I'm okay, and then I can move on to the next grammar point. Yeah. And at the same time also it gives teachers a lot of control. Yeah, teachers will feel like they're in charge of the classroom when they teach content like that. Yeah, teach grammar explicitly like that. So maybe those are some reasons as well. How about the others? Did you notice what were some of the reasons why, let's say this is the guy, right? Is the author, why he feels that teachers are still teaching according to the traditional way. Anybody? All the microphones are muted. Rachel? I think what I'll do is I'll call the ones that I cannot see, the ones that do not have their faces on, the ones that do not have their videos on, just to see whether they are actually here in the lesson. So Rachel, Rachel?
Yes, doctor. Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay. What do you think?
Sorry, my connection is quite bad, so I
Okay.
can't really. Yeah. So,
Yeah, okay, Rachel, what do you think? Yeah, are you still there? What struck you most about the writing? Maybe what kind of arguments that were given, um, you know, made you feel like, oh, this is something that I really agree to. Was there anything like that when you read through this?
I think that when I read this, because it's like normally we have an assumption saying that kids don't really like to read, because it's like even in our age, we were emphasized on how important reading is, but kids now are more on getting the pictures, in that form. They are more focused on images, and then this passage actually like um, got me in a it changed my view on reading, like especially when the title says that who knew that kids like to read. So it definitely changed my view on saying that actually there are kids who love reading. It's just that our assumption can be wrong. That was my understanding. I hope I answered that.
Okay. Okay, Rachel, thank you. It wasn't very clear, because I think maybe the connection wasn't really very good. Okay, but I'm glad that this article gets people to start thinking, yeah, about the teaching of grammar. Okay, so just for your information, yeah, this article and the next article that we will read not completely opposed to each other, but gives slightly different points of view regarding how grammar should be taught. And I'm also looking at this, or I have also given this for everyone to read, simply because if you're going to treat grammar teaching as simply teaching the rules, very traditional, it's very easy to do. Yeah? So anybody can do it. Yeah, anybody can do it because anybody can walk into a class, pick up a book on grammar and write on the board, yeah, what the grammar rule is and tell the students to do exercises on grammar. But that's why we need to look at different ways of teaching grammar. I'm not saying that you cannot do what I described earlier just now. Yeah? There will be sometime, some occasions where you may actually do that. Go walk into the room and just write a few words about the rules, depending on the situation. But that shouldn't be the case all the time. Yeah? You should be thinking of other different ways of teaching grammar. Okay. So, Ikuan, any other comments? Myra, do you have any other comments?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Are you answering for yourself or answering for Myra?
For myself.
Myra, do you have any comments?
I guess what we will discuss is just okay because you asked 5 questions just now. Who
Right.
is the author? Who is the audience? Or his or her audience? What is his points? What are his arguments? And how do you think about what his or her has written? I think we have answered all of that. But yeah, basically, I agree with everyone.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
doctor, I'm kind of leaning towards into traditional grammar.
Yeah.
Because-
Leaning towards traditional grammar. Okay. Why?
Yeah.
Any reason?
Because I think that is the satisfaction of learning a language.
Yeah.
knowing the rules.
Yeah. Please take into consideration what the students that this teacher is teaching. Yeah. Because the students here are middle school students, meaning to say they're not thinking of, for example, becoming experts in the language. Plus, this teacher is teaching English to mostly English-speaking students. Okay, so for that reason, I think that the students may not be so excited about it unless they're really kind of like very patriotic about their language, and then they want to say, oh, okay, now I know what a noun is, etc., etc. But if, for example, the teacher is teaching maybe German or another language, and they see the value of it, maybe they'll be a little bit more interested in different ways, like in different ways. Yes, the yellow box is on Myra. So is that because you want to say something?
No, I don't even know why the box is on me. I didn't, nothing but this.
How about the others? Najwa, Nurul Izian, Iliana, Nur Lisa, Nur Nakiba, Nur Iza, all muted. Why are you all muted? Yes, Nakiba.
When I read it, I just think the author trying to like convince the reader that that by learning literature, students can like learn grammar as well. So like his point is not very convincing, but I think yeah, everyone can have their opinion now.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Basically
Oh,
that.
I think you'll find it interesting that, uh, many of the lecturers in the tertiary unit are not interested in teaching grammar, yeah, because it's not much fun. Okay. Very kind of like technical and so on and so forth. Uh, the only lecturers who may be interested will be Dr. Liliati, because that her PhD is in grammar. I mean, related to teaching of grammar. And surprisingly, for you to know, Puan Jurida is also interested in teaching grammar. Why? Because I think she has the same view that actually, when you try to understand the stories that you read, one way of understanding it is to understand the language, right? And the language is seen through the grammar, yeah? Because the relationship between one word and another, the relationship between, say, is this said in the past tense, is this said in the present tense, is this, are things said in the future, what kind of clauses are used, short sentences, long sentences, they all make some sort of, they all uh, provide some sort of effect on how something is written, right? So because of that, you tend to feel that literature and grammar, although some people think literature is so different from grammar, but they are actually very closely related. Okay, yeah,
Actually,
so,
doctor,
right.
people argue about this on Twitter because there's this one girl, she was talking about how Malaysians are now very not fluent in English, and she said that to learn English better, you have to study literature because when she was a kid, she read Shakespeare and stuff. But people like argue that because imagine that you don't use the English that you use in Shakespeare. So people were arguing about how like her way of learning is different from now.
Okay. Uh, yeah, but actually, when people say, like this writer, yeah, the reason why he's saying that you learn grammar through literature is simply, I think, because you learn grammar for use. Okay, for use, meaning to say you learn the language, and as you learn the language, you pick up the grammar. So, in other words, if you focus on literature, or instead of literature, more reading, okay, reading, maybe even speaking not so much, because speaking doesn't really have that much grammar, although it does have, but it's not really very emphasized, okay. But in reading, when you say literature, it doesn't mean that you have to read literary books, yeah, or stories or something like that. Here, I think the emphasis, although he emphasizes literature, it's really about reading. It's about teaching grammar in other ways that are not traditional, like what Ikwan said, non-traditional teaching of grammar. Yeah, so he's emphasizing that if you use the language, then you will pick up the grammar, yeah, in some way. And he emphasizes certain things. I think when you read through this, that there have been people who have done research who show that teaching of grammar may be useless lah, maybe doesn't really help. These are some opinions, yeah. But we will discuss this, of course. Yeah, we will discuss this as we go along. Yeah, but this is a point of view. Yes, Asmita, the yellow box is around your name. So do you want to say anything?
I think when it comes to the reading part, yeah, I
Mhm.
agree that it does help with grammar. But I think as a teacher, we should also look at the level of our students, like what can they read, what they cannot read. Because reading, it it's good because most literature uses standard English. So it's good for students to, like, if you use speaking or like other methods, the English may not be very standard because you use slang and like maybe short forms of words, and it's not necessarily grammatically correct. So when we teach our students using literature, we have to look at their level, because some like maybe like older classics, their language is a bit different. It's like the English is a bit higher. So maybe we should not use like classics to teach weaker students. We should use texts that are shorter and use like more simple language so that they find it easier to understand the grammar and follow along.
Yeah, completely agree. I think the issue here really is students' interest and motivation, because if they are interested and motivated in what they are reading, they will try to, as as much as they can, understand what they have read. Okay, so for me, for example, I grew up reading a lot of comics. Okay, so all these comics, Spider-Man and Avengers and X-Men and even Conan the Barbarian, all this I read as a child, when I was younger. So I can remember whenever I come across words that I don't understand, although these are just dialogue bubbles, I will go to the dictionary to find out what they mean. So so for me, I was interested or motivated in a sense. Yeah. So definitely classics may not be motivating enough, although, I will have to say that I've read, Shakespeare before, and some of the stories are really very interesting. You have to have somebody who will help you to understand what's happening, but some of the plays are very interesting because they are human nature type, tragedies and comedies and things like that. But maybe not for our kids, more for maybe more excerpts, or short text. But even excerpts, if they're interested enough, if it's a story narrative, maybe you can continue to another excerpt which is related to the first one. So, the point is really, are they interesting enough? Okay, right? But at the same time, I also think that as a teacher, we cannot completely just rely on, we just come to the classroom and say, oh, okay, let's read this paragraph, or let's read this excerpt. We have to read prior to the classroom, identify what grammar points may need to be highlighted, or what grammar points you expect that the students have to go through to understand the story, so that you can actually talk about it if it is necessary. So in other words, we cannot as a teacher just go into the classroom and say, okay, read this, page 1 or page 10 or page 11. You have to prepare in advance and know what you are actually wanting to teach. Yeah. So any other comments here? Yeah, Yasin, you have suddenly appeared. Do you have anything to say? Yasin, any comments? Yeah, you can refer to any of the paragraphs and say something about it. Anything you want to comment on. Yes.
Doctor, cannot talk.
No voice, cannot hear. This must be your strategy. Or is it because connection not very good, huh?
No, my laptop.
Okay, Yasin. Thank you. Cannot hear you. Okay. Anybody else has has any other things to say? Any other opinions? How about someone from I don't get to see all of your faces, but someone from, non-Malaysians. Bao, how about you, Bao?
Doctor, actually, I don't have anything to comment here.
Did you read?
Yeah, actually, but I haven't finished them all. I just,
Okay.
had a pick of it.
Okay, but what about the discussion so far? What do you think? Would you agree that you want? I mean, I know that in China, at least from the people that I talk to, the students that I talk to, they tend to be more traditional, traditional grammar, meaning to say
Yeah.
they don't teach grammar through reading or grammar through other things, but they focus on the rules.
Yeah, actually, most of us does that because during the middle school or primary school, we always do that. We always just learn about the rules instead of how to actually use this. So I agree. It's kind of traditional.
Okay, so I assume that it does work with many of the students, but in this article, some of the things that the author gives are anecdotal. Yeah? Anecdotal means through his own experiences. It's a story. It's not backed by research. So, what do you think from your own experience? What about the students did all the students like learning grammar, English through grammar? I mean, through explicitly traditional grammar?
Actually, I don't prefer learning grammar through traditional way because it's not practical. It's not practical enough because from my experience through all these years when I was learning grammar, I was kind of forced to learn all the rules to memorize it all the time. But when I actually have to use it in conversations, I don't know how to use them. I don't have the courage or knowledge to use them at all. So I think the traditional way of learning grammar only improves, writing skills or how to pass examinations, but instead of using them in reality, in real life conversations.
Okay. Yeah, very good points. Okay. This is true, wherever we have an emphasis on examinations. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you have that, the teacher also tends to focus on what is correct and what is, not correct. So, they focus on right and wrong. And then when it comes to grammar, obviously they want to focus on the grammar.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, but you do have some, you do have proficiency in the language. You can use the language. Wow. So, how did you get that? Was it because you trained on your own, or was it through did you practice on your own, or through people you meet, or through the classrooms?
A little both, actually. I try to create some opportunities for myself because, for example, I usually see some foreigners on the streets. I try to make conversation with them. So that's actually one of the ways. And also I watch lots of TV shows to practice my oral skills. So
Okay.
that's all I did.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, very interesting. Okay, let's move on to some other people. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for your comments. I just want to know, because the assumption here is that as you do other things, you begin to realize or understand how the language works. So I just want to know from everyone here, is that what happens? That when you read something or when you listen to something, you watch TV, you suddenly realize, oh, this is how it works. You're talking about the language. Do you do that consciously, unconsciously, or what happens? This is once again anecdotal. This is your experiences. Yeah, this is open a question that I'm asking to everybody. Anybody can answer this.
I really agree with that, Doctor, because since I'm in kindergarten, I always watch cartoons, English cartoon.
Okay.
Ya Allah, sorry. English cartoons specifically. And like my mom even tell me that yes, since like I'm in like 4 or 5 years old, I watch English cartoons. Nobody asked me to, but I just watch it. So like between my siblings, they don't even watch English cartoons, but I'm the only one who watches it. So out of three, I'm the one who like good in English than my sister and brother actually
Yeah.
by
Okay.
watching cartoons and like
Okay.
movies.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I think people who can speak, they do try to expose themselves to a lot more of the language, yeah, compared to others who have difficulty using the language. So they do take every opportunity. But I'm just wondering what happens as you watch cartoons. You know, do you suddenly try to figure out what is being said when you don't understand it, or after you listen to it so many times, you listen to the joke so many times, then only you realize, oh, okay, now I understand what's happening? Or is it because of the visuals that help you to understand? What exactly is happening? Because the theory is that if you teach grammar implicitly, then students will make the connections and figure out, oh, okay, this is how I ask a question, or this is how I say no, or this is how I refer to somebody. This is what kind of pronoun should be used to address or to look at or to refer to this person or to that person, and so on and so forth. You know, what happens? Yes, Hiba, I see the yellow box around you. Do you have anything to say?
Um, yes, I might say something. I think every new idea would be really fighted from everyone. Any new idea would be brought new. Everyone would just stand against. I mean, we all work with traditions. This is what I want to say first. And secondly, by the idea of the text from the viewpoint of the writer, he said that by learning throughout literature, we can learn a lot. Yes, I do believe that when you read literature, any type of literature, you can still you can learn the new ways of um, uh, skills of language. I want to focus on the point of skills of language, especially for examination. When we take examination, they focus on how do we use the language in the context. For example, the word water, we usually use it in I drink water. But when I use it as I'm watering the plants, I use it as a verb. So in the context, we can see this, the language skills and how is it used throughout the text. So I think, yeah, yes, it is a very useful way to study throughout literature.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, there are theories or methods that focus on reading, yeah, and even in the teaching of grammar. Okay, and I think that this is to some extent logical, simply because when you read something, reading is not just like uttering the words, yeah, not reading aloud, but trying to understand, comprehension, right? So because text is more permanent than speech, right? So you have the opportunity to look back and forth and try to understand, okay, what is the connection between this and what's the connection between that, the parts of the text. So, there are people who will say that this is the way to teach language, yeah, but through reading, which is all right. It is something that we can consider, yeah. But from the perspective of the teacher, you have to be a little bit more involved, because you can't just say, as I said earlier, you can't just come into the classroom and give them a reading text, and then you just sit down, you know, uh, and hope that everything works out on their own. But you have to plan in such a way that you know what to expect, where the difficult parts may be, what kind of connections the students should be making, so that you will be able to still monitor, and you will still be able to say that I'm still teaching. Okay, so this is a big issue, yeah, because some people say, okay, I'm not going to teach grammar explicitly, I'm going to teach grammar implicitly, and this is what they do. They just come to the classroom, give them something to read, or give them a topic to speak about, and then say, okay, that's it, lesson is over after 30 or 40 minutes. Okay, so this is also something we need to consider. Yes, Philomena. Philomena, the yellow box is over, around you. Yeah. Do you want to say anything?
Yes, doctor.
Yes.
About literature.
Yeah, about the article and
About the
literature, your own experiences. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, doctor, I couldn't hear that. About literature or the article in general?
In general, about anything that has been said, you want to contribute to the discussion. The discussion has on and off focused on the article. Sometimes it focused on other things. So it's up to you what you want to say. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, doctor. So so basically, I believe that about literature, whether it is learning or teaching literature, I think that it involves more reading activities and understanding compared to grammar, because literature plays an important role in expanding our vocabulary, right? So I think that it will automatically improve our language skills. So that's my understanding for now.
Okay. Yeah, okay, I agree completely, especially with respect to vocabulary. Okay, so sometimes people talk about teaching of grammar or grammar instruction, they include vocabulary as well. Okay, but for us, we know that language is a little bit more complicated than just words, right? So we kind of like, look at, connections between clauses and so on and so forth, those kinds of things, and meaning and so on and so forth. Yeah, but literature will also be able to help do that as well. More obviously, of course, is with the vocabulary. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fine. Thank you, Philomena. Anybody else has anything to say? I'm curious to know, because I'm playing around with this little box where I can see 6 people at a time. What do you see? At the moment, what do you see?
The screen and your screen.
Actually,
Okay.
doctor, you can, if may I know if the boxes are on top of the screen or in the right side?
Yeah, it's on the right side. I see 6
If
pictures,
it's
6 at a time.
if it's in the right side, you can actually pull it, make like more boxes to be shown there.
Okay.
You can try.
Yeah. Because I'm just, kind of like, moving from 6 to another 6 to another 6. So I'm just wondering whether when I'm looking at this, you get to see the same people. Like, for example, right now I see Nurul Imanina, I see Nur Lisa, Nurul Mawada, Iliana, Nur Hazika, and Hasmita. Their names there. But I don't know what you see. You see different people, huh? Okay. Mawada, you have anything to say? So very interesting because, okay, yeah, Mawada, you have anything to say? Nurul, Mawada.
No, doctor.
Huh? No, nothing to say? Okay, this is it. This is the difficulty of online teaching. It would be nice to hear everybody's voice, but sometimes we don't get to hear this, except for hello, Dr. Arshad. Thank you, Dr. Arshad. And no, yes. I would like to also hear, opinions and what you have in mind, what you want to say.
Doctor, can I say something?
Yes, let me see who that is. Munira.
I don't open my camera.
Okay.
Sorry, doctor, I have sore throat, so my voice is quite, I don't know how to say my voice.
Okay. All right.
I already woke up, doctor, but yes, I have
You
sore
just woke
throat.
up?
I have sore throat. No. I have sore throat, doctor. I have sore throat. I
You
promise
have a
you, I
sore
have sore
throat.
throat.
Okay, you have a sore throat.
Yes.
Okay, you're not a sore
Yes.
throat. You have a sore throat.
Yes, I have a sore throat.
Okay.
Okay. So I think I agree that grammar, we cannot just come in, like teacher cannot just come into class and then present to them, okay, this is the rules, and then they have to just explain the rules, and then like make a conclusion that everyone will understand. Because during the old days, my teachers tend to do it, and then we don't even remember actually. We just remember at that moment. We will complete our exercises, and then after that we don't remember, especially during when we do our essays.
Okay.
So I think by like using like storytelling or comprehension, like you said, that one will work better, and then it is less pressuring for the students, especially to the students that is below than the average class or starting from the average class, because their language acquisition is quite less than
Yeah.
students.
Okay.
Yes, I guess that's all, doctor. That's my opinion.
Okay, Munira, those are good points. Because you did raise a few things that I think a lot of people have pointed out. That sometimes when you teach and then you give a test or you give them an exercise, they will be able to answer it. Because it is close to almost immediately after you have taught. Okay. So, and the teacher may assume that because the students can answer them correctly, then they must be able to use them correctly as well. But this is not always the case. Yeah? And this research has also shown this. Yeah, it's proven this. That it doesn't mean that if you can answer the questions correctly in class, that they will be able to use it correctly outside of class. Okay, because they don't remember it. They only remember short term. It's not put into their long-term memory. Okay, for it to be in their long-term memory, sorry, I have a sore throat also. Okay, for them to put into the long-term memory, they have to make connections, meaning to say they have to see the relevance of what they have just learned. Okay, they have to discover perhaps these things and how important they are. Okay, but if they are just kind of like answering questions, teacher says, he goes, she goes, they go, and so on and so forth, subject verb agreement, they will be able to answer it correctly in a simple quiz at the end of the lesson. But after that, they may not be able to do that because it never really, was not never really integrated into their developing language system. Okay, so yeah, this is very true. So one of the things that a lot of teachers do is to present grammar or to ensure that grammar is presented in a cyclical manner. That means it's always used. Yeah, it's used over and over again, and not consider once we have talked about, say, relative pronouns. Okay, then because I've taught you that, then you should know what the answers are, and I'm not going to use it anymore. I'm going to use something else, or I'm going to look at something else. Okay, very interesting discussion. Anybody wants to kind of like wrap things up and maybe highlight some of the things that were also mentioned in the article? I will also highlight a few things, like, for example, there's this thing called apprenticeship of experience, meaning to say your experience is actually your teacher. Okay, you're an apprentice to your experience. So sometimes what happens is, no matter how much you learn from, or how much you go through maybe a degree course or something like that, sometimes when you go out and teach, you will always go back to how you were taught. Okay, you will always feel like, oh, my teacher taught me this way, so I'm going to teach it this way also. So my teacher taught language focusing on grammar, so I'm going to teach the same way. Yeah. So that happens to some people, of course, not to all. Yeah. So I think that for us, hopefully, when we decide on how we want to teach grammar, we have a justification, and that justification is supported perhaps through you know research, or maybe through reading or some people's points of view or something like that. Okay, so that you will be more confident and you know that you are doing something the right way, and it's something that you have belief in. Yeah, because as a teacher, if you don't believe what you are teaching is the right way, or how you are teaching is the right way, how can you kind of like be sure that your students are learning? Yeah, so you have to have confidence and belief in the way you teach. Okay, so grammar is something that has got many different opinions on how to teach, whether it is traditional, whether it is explicit, whether it is implicit, you know. And we also talked about there may not be one way, one right way of teaching grammar. It depends a lot on the students, yeah, what kind of students you get, and it depends also on what you are trying to teach. Okay. So, any final words? Suhail, any final words?
Um, for me myself, I think that um, from the last paragraph of this article,
Yeah.
the author said that um, it is very important to have the experience of communicating in that language for students to acquire the knowledge, the language better. Such as if, for me myself, my foreign language here is Thailand, but I rarely speak Thailand, so my Thailand fluency is close to zero.
Yeah.
So, but it the acquired but that language can actually be improved if I had actually talked with my friends or the lecturer in Thai, and then I think that from I think that um my Thai level can be better than right now. So that's it.
Okay, I think good points also. I think that if I were to learn a foreign language, I would ask, what exactly do I want to learn about it? How exactly do I want to use it? And that would decide on what will be important for me. If I want to learn Thai, maybe it's because I want to go to Thailand, you know, um, and do some things like, for example, when I went to Japan, I learned a little bit of Japanese, but I cannot really speak Japanese, but I can still remember, phrases that I use, which were important to me. Like, for example, sakana. Sakana is fish, right? So it was important for me to, you know, uh, especially when wanting to eat, to say, sakana, okay. And I think the other part of the uh, phrase was nikudame or something like that, meaning to say no meat, but fish is okay. So it was important. It was useful to me, which means that actually this is, what I'm trying to say is it's depends on the need, how much you need it, yeah, and also the motivation behind it. Okay, so yeah, interesting things. Finally, one last person, one last comment. King Yi, do you have anything to say?
For me, I think that some grammar teachers prefer to stick to the traditional methods
Yeah.
because first, to incorporate grammar teaching with other aspects such as literature or physical activities or stories and so on is quite disorganized. It does not have a structure that is discussed on by the ministry or the committee and so on. And also to pick up grammar usage in how we speak the English language. For me, I think it occurs across quite a long span of time, and maybe the teachers, it's hard for teachers to see the results through this way, for them to pick up grammar, as we say, naturally. That's what I think.
Yes, all these are very relevant and excellent points. Okay, and these are things that are being raised, often, yeah. Especially when you feel that teaching it implicitly is how students will learn better. If that is your point of view, then you have to bear in mind that this is not a very systematic manner, and you have to provide the system to it. So you have to be more prepared, yeah, with respect to what is being taught, yeah. So yeah, these are all things that we will also be discussing as we go along in the course, yeah. And like I said, I hope that at the end of the course, perhaps you will all have some, I'm not trying to say that there will always be one correct way of teaching grammar, yeah? Because grammar instruction, I've explained many times, is it's affected by so many things. Okay, so but what's important is that the teacher knows what he's trying to do, okay, and how he's trying to achieve it, and is able to tell whether it's effective or not effective. So that's what's important, yeah. Okay, so that's what we will probably be looking at as we go along. Okay, so I will. Okay, wait. There's a chat. My mic is not working. Okay, never mind. Right. I will just show you for a while what we will be looking at on Monday. Okay. And this is the second presentation, and you'll find that actually it's not working. Hold on. Once again, it's one of those things, when you're doing this. So I'll put this up on Monday, but I'll just, run through this very quickly. It's 10:15. I don't want to spend so much time, on the class today. So anyway, this is what I'm going to go through on Monday. These are basically arguments, yeah, arguments for and against the teaching of grammar. So when I say for or against the teaching of grammar, it doesn't mean that, it's basically whether you teach it explicitly or you teach it implicitly, okay? So, and these are some arguments for the teaching of grammar. And these arguments come from a book by Rob Batstone. No, sorry, Thornbury, Scott Thornbury, okay? Thornbury. So these are some arguments for the teaching of grammar. Okay, so if you look at this, you see fine-tuning argument, fossilization, etc., etc. Yeah. So we will discuss this on Monday. What do these things mean? Okay, and the flip side are arguments against the teaching of grammar.
Are you showing slides?
Yeah.
Can you
You don't
guys
see
see
them?
the
I
slide?
can't see them.
Oh, okay.
Do you see them?
No.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Let me try this again.
You see the folder.
Kejap, kejap, kejap.
Can you see the note?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So as I was saying, you know, I'm on Monday what we will be discussing arguments for the teaching of grammar. Okay, and these arguments are highlighted by Scott Thornbury. Okay, and these are some of the arguments which we will discuss. Yeah, sentence machine argument, fine tuning, fossilization, etc., etc. Okay, and on the flip side, yeah, the other point of view is the argument against the teaching of grammar. This does not mean that you completely don't teach grammar, but you don't make it explicit. You know, this varies. Some will say don't teach grammar at all. Okay, some may feel that grammar can be taught, but not explicitly. It can be taught implicitly. Yeah, so these are some of the arguments that are given by that are highlighted by Scott Thornbury. He just highlights them. He doesn't say that he favors one over the other. Okay, so you have lexis, knowledge how, etc., etc. Okay, and we will go through all of this as well. Yeah, so we will also look at a little bit about a short history of grammar and language teaching. Okay, the summary of the short history is that it's like a pendulum. Okay, you know what a pendulum is? You remember your science?
Yeah, balls.
Yes,
Oh wait,
bandul.
that sounds so wrong.
That's
It's
the
okay.
like the ball.
Right, a pendulum that moves, you know, to one side and then swings to the other side and so on and so forth. So that's how it is, you know, with grammar. At one time, it's going explicit teaching of grammar, and then it swings to the other side, you know, more implicit, and then it swings to the other side, you know, explicit, and then it comes back to more implicit. Okay. At one time, when we had the communicative language teaching approach, it's kind of like implicit. Okay. Don't focus too much on grammar, although it's important, but don't focus too much, or you focus only in certain conditions. And then now we tend to be going back to a little bit more towards explicit. And you will find that in many countries, I won't say in many countries, but our neighbor in Singapore, they are going back to a little bit more focus on grammar. So that's how it is, you know, and it shows or reflects that teaching of grammar, there is no one right way of doing it. It depends on the context, depends on the situation. Maybe the more it becomes a foreign language, the more it will tend to be explicit. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We can discuss this. So anyway, that's about all that I would like to talk about today. Thank you for the discussion. Thank you for participating. I think it's good to participate. It doesn't matter, what your opinions are. Everybody is entitled to an opinion. Okay, and it's also good to be, using the language in these kinds of academic type situations. Okay, so I think with that we will stop here. Okay, unless there are any questions. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No question. Yes, Iqbal. Is that a goodbye or raising your hand? You raise your hand. Goodbye.
It's a goodbye.
Okay, goodbye. Okay. Okay, so we'll end here. A little bit early, never mind. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. If don't go away yet, I will take class attendance. Okay. Control alternate print screen. Okay.